So it's going to be a wild ride, and for those of you that are prepared, you're going to be the ones that are going to be able to advise people as to what's happening and to how to deal with the situation. So I'm going to give you, in this 2-hour presentation, followed by 30 minutes of Q&A, a really succinct overview of what I believe you need to know to be prepared for this cosmic hoax or this alien false flag psyop. So when did it all begin? Where does the literature discussing an alien false flag event begin? Well, I found that the first reference to it was in this document called Report from Iron Mountain on the Possibility and Desirability of Peace. And that was authored by Leonard Levin, and that was ostensibly commissioned on behalf of several government agencies in the US. But the author later on said that it was just his creation, a work of fiction. Plausible deniability was established because this was a report that involved very senior level officials, scientists, discussing what would be required to maintain the military-industrial complex, given all of the movements towards world peace. So this report runs through a number of different scenarios about the future and what can happen, and which of these scenarios would help support or take away from a permanent war economy. So we can see why the military-industrial complex would have been interested in this report. So the key passage in the report that is relevant to what we're looking at today is this, quote, "Development of an acceptable threat from outer space, presumably in conjunction with a space research surrogate for economic control, appears unpromising in terms of credibility. New, less regressive approaches to the creation of fictitious global enemies invite further investigation." So this document is looking at a number of possible false flag events for the future, and identifies one of them as being an attack from outer space, but says that at that time in the 1960s that would not be a credible threat. And what the report from Iron Mountain makes clear is that this idea of credibility for a false flag event is very important. If it's going to succeed, you need to be able to convince the population that it really is happening. So it does refer in the document to a recognized extraterrestrial menace. So this is the first time that you actually have a document. Now, whether it's an official government document, a work of fiction as the author claims after the fact, or some kind of commissioned study that was classified but then leaked, whatever the truth behind the report from Iron Mountain is, one thing is clear, is that it is outlining a possible false flag event involving an attack from outer space, involving a recognized extraterrestrial menace, and that would be necessary to maintain very high levels of military spending, the military-industrial complex at that time. Now, in 1967, those technologies did not exist. Now, what's very interesting is that 7 years later, Carol Rosen says that she began working as a corporate manager at Fairchild Industries, which is a company that Wernher von Braun went to after he retired from the NASA Apollo program in 1972. And he went to Fairchild Industry because he was working on a secret space station that was based on his design, which is called the von Braun design, or the von Braun space station. So this is what Carol Rosen says that von Braun told her.
He would bring up that last card, and remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens, and all of it, he said, is a lie.
So there's Carol Rosen talking about what she was told in 1974 by von Braun about a series of false flag events culminating in the alien invasion. Now, obviously, something like that would involve multiple parties, multiple agencies, even nation states, all collaborating to pull off such a series of false flag events in the United States. Now, the question that I find very interesting is that, was von Braun a double agent? We know he was a Operation Paperclip scientist, and we know, based on my research and the work of many others, that the Germans had established a breakaway colony in Antarctica, and von Braun was an intermediary. So I think von Braun was a double agent, and the question is, was von Braun relaying a plan that not only involved various government agencies in the United States and corporations, but also the Antarctic Germans, and of course their allies as well, in this false flag alien invasion event? And I think as we look deeper and deeper into the complexity of this alien false flag event, it becomes clear that it would have been something that could only be successfully deployed as a global event, because you couldn't have an alien false flag invasion just in the United States. It would have to be some kind of global event. And that would involve a series of governments, institutions, collaborating with powerful groups such as the Antarctic German breakaway civilization. I talk about the Antarctic German breakaway civilization in my book, Antarctica's Hidden History, and in one of the webinars I updated the information recently with what we know has been occurring in Antarctica since that book came out in 2018. So Antarctica, the German breakaway colony down there called the Dark Fleet, what role would they play in this alien false flag event? I'll get to that as we go on. So von Braun in 1974 warns Carol Rosen. So what happened next? Well, now we move forward to the early 1990s, and Serge Monast was a Canadian investigative journalist, and he worked with a number of insiders, and he learned about this alien false flag event, and he published a book on it titled Project Bluebeam. It was only published in French and has never been translated, which is very interesting. Now, the thing was that Monast was a very independent-minded journalist. He was someone that didn't believe in the system. He was homeschooling his children and putting out a lot of information about the corruption in the Canadian political scene and in the US. What happened was that in late 1996, his children are taken away from him, and then he is arrested, and one day later he's declared dead from an alleged heart attack. And he was at the time 51, very young for someone to die from a heart attack, who had no history of heart ailments at all, especially given that he, in his writings and his lectures, identified psychotronic technologies that had been developed by the CIA that could induce heart attacks. So wouldn't that be very sad that while he revealed that kind of technology, that it was used against him? So in his book, he identifies 4 steps of Project Bluebeam. The 4 steps to global domination. So the first step Monash identified was that the deep state would contrive the discovery of religious artifacts that would lead to a new understanding of major religions around the world. Step 2, using technologies, advanced technologies, 3-dimensional holograms and laser projections of Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Krishna, all appear and merge into one entity. So you would have the use of advanced technologies to project images into